Kia ora koutou, and I'm just going to do a wee sound check for the live stream. That's all good. Okay, so excuse me using a microphone when there are no visible speakers, but we also, as well as having a bunch of lovely people in the Wellington room today, we also have people tuning in from home on live stream. So the microphone is actually for their benefit. Welcome everyone to the Sustainable Business Council What's Ahead event, starting with the Communications and Storytelling event. My name is Catherine Jeffcoat and I'm the Communications Manager for the Sustainable Business Council.
Hello, I'm Rachel Cox. I came on board in December in a part-time capacity to do communications for the Climate Leaders Coalition.
And so I've had the pleasure of dealing with some of you already, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you today. And first of all, I'd just like to acknowledge a few members of the SBC team who are in the room with us. So our beloved Executive Director, Abby Reynolds, down from Auckland, very welcome. And we also have Alison Hurft, who I'm sure you all know, who's our Membership Engagement Manager and leading the consumer decision-making work. We also have Amy, who's been our wonderful events coordinator so far. Deb has been doing a wonderful job of organising. Great. So today, some of you may have been here before, but just in case, in the event of an emergency, the exits are the stairwells on either side of the lift, and the toilets are in the same direction as well. Men this side, women down that end. Okay, so today we want to talk about some of the features of storytelling as we see it for sustainability and climate action. And can I just get a sense of who's in the room? Because we have both Sustainable Business Council members here today and people who are in the Climate Leaders Coalition, but not necessarily SBC, can I just ask you to stand up if you're in SBC, please? Lovely, very good. And can you please stay standing up if you're also in the Climate Leaders Coalition? Yay! Okay, good. All right. Don't worry, it's really easy to join. Yeah. And could you please stand up if you're in the Climate Leaders Coalition but not in SBC, just so we can... Are you feeling picked on? It's okay, it's really easy to join SBC as well. See Alison. Yep. Okay, and so a lot of what we're talking about today, the principles apply to sustainability storytelling, climate action storytelling, and a lot of you will want to apply those principles to both. I'll just get a show of hands this time because it's easier. How many of you here are in communication roles? So you've got communications in your job title. Sheena, wonderful. And hey, Caitlin, from Thank You Payroll, fantastic. Love your work, by the way. Yep. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. Yes, and Dacia Herveylock from the Science Media Centre. Fantastic. Special guest. Also, okay, so everybody else is, I presume, working in sustainability or other sort of similar function. And I see a few familiar faces of our sustainability managers here today. Great. Okay, so just to give a bit of context about why SBC is interested in sustainability storytelling. Our purpose is to get sustainability to become mainstream in New Zealand businesses. And to do that, we think it's really important that other businesses see what you are doing in sustainability, so that they see that it's good for business, it's good for staff, it's good for the environment, for society and the communities that they operate in. And so we want to tell your stories so that we can inspire them to get on board. And so really part of that is about telling stories in the places that business leaders are looking for their information. So that's one of our primary audiences when we're talking about sustainability. And I sent out an email poll, and thank you everyone who got back to me. We had quite a lot of responses in Auckland as well. So I asked you, where do your business leaders get their information from? And we got very good results. Really, New Zealand Herald and MBR seem to be very predominant sources of information, closely followed by Stuff. TV and radio have some of a role to play, mostly because I think of how consumers perceive the businesses, and business leaders pay attention to that as filtered through television. And Radio New Zealand featured quite highly, higher than I would have thought, actually. So that was interesting. And then it was followed by the usual suspects, the News Talk, News Talk and what was Radio Live, and the other, and then some social media and industry press, etc. So that was really interesting for us, because it sort of confirmed the approach that we're taking in terms of the media organisations that we're targeting. Okay, so, and would you like to talk about?
Yes, so the Climate Leaders Coalition is a bit of an offshoot in a way. So in 2017, there was a group of SBC member chief executives that all really wanted to do something and show voluntary action on climate change. So what that kind of culminated in was, in July last year, we launched the Climate Leaders Coalition. I like to think of it kind of as a club. So by joining, your business has said, we care about this stuff, and that by the first anniversary, we're going to be measuring and publicly reporting emissions, setting a public emissions reduction target, and also working with suppliers. So it was launched with 60 members. We're now up to 76 signatories. We really want to crack 100 by the time of the first anniversary in July. And we're just starting to have a bit of a think about what that first anniversary looks like. And at this stage, there will be some sort of low emissions solutions event, which will be run, and hopefully also we'll do some sort of snapshot report, because there'll be a lot of media interest in particular around, right, you've been up and running for a year, what have you achieved? So if you guys are part of the CLC and your business hasn't kind of got on with this stuff, you've got 6 months. Otherwise, it's going to be quite kind of obvious when other businesses have got lots to say and you don't. So you've still got time.
Okay, so what is the public interest in sustainability and climate change issues? And when I say the public interest, media interest is a pretty good proxy for that. So if you're pitching stories to media and not getting anywhere, it's probably because they think that there won't be a readership for them. So we think sustainability interest is pretty low still, but it's definitely growing, particularly with issues like plastics being absolutely, front and centre of the public debate these days. The Colmar Brunton Better Futures report, which was released about this time last year, found that key consumers who are changing their behaviour in response to concerns about the environment are low-income earners, as well as women and people over 60. So it's not necessarily just a luxury to care about the environment when all of your other needs are being met. There is I think a groundswell of concern amongst other broader groups than we've thought in the past. So
in terms of climate change, it has changed a lot in the past few months. So it's gone from abstract to reality. So it's really interesting. This morning we actually caught up with Stuff, and one of the things they said is one of the stories that is getting the most readership at the moment is around adaptation, especially stories about low-lying communities and what it means for the people on the ground that have lost their properties. So we're seeing a lot more media interest, but also people reading those stories. There was also, going back to Colmar Brunton, they found that 2/3 of New Zealanders think that climate change is the biggest issue facing the planet today. And pre the last election, the Deloitte Business New Zealand survey found that it was in the top 10 of what businesses cared about. So there's definitely growing awareness.
Thanks.
The one other thing too is this year is going to be a really big year for government and for Parliament. So we are all kind of eagerly anticipating the zero carbon bill. We're hoping that there'll be some sort of bipartisan agreement. Hopefully it'll get tabled in Parliament soon. And one of the things we're really, really keen to see is, I know there's a bit of apprehension from business to actually kind of dabble in the political spectrum in that world, but we are really keen to get some business leaders to actually go and front at Select Committee and talk about why it's important, because it's a really, really big issue, and it's one that we don't really think that business can be silent on.
Okay, so I put this up here just to remind us all of the sheer breadth of sustainability issues. And also would like to get a quick show of hands so how many of you in the room have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? Yeah, I'd expect a fairly high number. How many of you think that they're relevant for your communications work? Yeah, okay, fewer, yeah. So what we see here is, the full breadth of these, and they're coming up all the time, even if people don't necessarily make the connection to the specific goal. So, for example, we've had just recently Gillette taking a stand on a social issue to do with gender equality. With the Gillette ad, I recommend it as a piece of filmmaking if you haven't seen it already. And we've had the Eat Lancet report about what is needed in food production to achieve a low carbon diet. And I've printed it out and stuck it on the fridge as a bit of a reminder to us to just eat a few more vegetables. Also, it's so nice having you in the room, Abby. There's Australia has just passed legislation on checking on modern slavery in the supply chain. And just recently on Netflix, you may have heard of a special by someone called Marie Kondo, which may have a wee impact on sustainable, responsible consumption. If people are decluttering, then, are they going to end up buying fewer things? Now, I have my own personal Marie Kondo story that I would like to share with you. A couple of years ago, someone gave me the Marie Kondo book. Now, this was obviously very ahead of the trend. She's very ahead of the trend sort of woman. And I read it, and I held it in my hand, and it did not spark joy. So I thanked it, and I gave it to someone else. So that's my take on decluttering. I did get rid of one book. But you can see that, these issues are out there in the public debate all the time, but people don't necessarily think of them as sustainable issues. So that's where we can kind of join the dots for them. Also, in the New Zealand context, of course, I think it's important to acknowledge Te Tiriti o Waitangi almost as the 18th goal for us here. And just as an aside, I think it's really interesting how organisations are now starting to map their strategy against the Sustainable Development Goals to see on the spectrum of sustainability where they are doing work and where they perhaps have still to do more work. And for example, Sanford, Countdown and Fonterra are a few of the companies who I'd like to acknowledge as doing really good work in that area. I've got some examples of... Okay, and just so you know, Colmar Brunton in their report last year found that only 28% of adult Kiwis had heard of the Sustainable Development Goals. So you're doing better than the average. But I mention that also because I think it's important to acknowledge that it's hard to communicate about these to people who aren't already in the know. So I think there's a lot of general awareness of sustainability issues still to do in New Zealand. So this is my breakdown on how New Zealanders see sustainability issues. So over here we have kind of people issues, to do with quality education, gender equality, no poverty, reduced inequalities, decent work and economic growth. These are things that might touch your staff or your communities. And, oh, sure, yeah, companies should be doing all those things, but you don't necessarily get points for it in terms of being good on the sustainability front. I think they just expect you to do some of these things as being a good employer, full stop. And maybe the bar in terms of what an organisation is expected to do as a minimum is raising quickly. Then over here, these three big issues that people really recognise, and what we're trying to I've said we're doomed because we are trying to get away from that prevailing narrative around climate change, when actually, we still want to inspire people to take action and to have hope. And then down here we've got affordable clean energy, responsible consumption and production, life on land, sustainable cities, industry and infrastructure. Yeah, okay, I think we're getting down to a few more recognisable things that people might actually say, oh yes, sustainability, that's what it is. Although every time I mention where I work, someone always says to me, oh yes, I saw these great recycling bins the other day. Fine, yes, do recycle. Okay, so that's perception of sustainability.
So in terms of the perception of the Climate Leaders Coalition, I started this role in December, and quite handily for me, Rod Oram, who's a commentator, wrote quite a thoughtful piece in Newsroom, and he was pretty positive about the CLC, but he said we kind of had three main challenges. One, he thought that some of our members weren't doing enough. He thought that the storytelling wasn't great around, not just gimmicky things that you're doing, like something in the EV space, but how are you credibly going to get to net zero? But also he thought we were sitting on the fence too much. So some of the priorities for me for the year are to get Climate Leaders Coalition members out there a bit, and to get them talking collectively about what they are doing to reduce their emissions, but also just really encourage them and give them opportunities to kind of get into the debate. And I think going back to the Zero Carbon Bill, that's going to be a really good opportunity for business leaders to kind of poke their head up. So the other perception that I found quite interesting was this one by Charlie Mitchell. So he's an environment reporter for Stuff. In January, he kind of talked, this was included in one of his stories, and what I took from this is I went back and watched the live stream from when the Climate Leaders Coalition launched, and the first media question was, is this greenwashing? So I think things have moved on a bit in the past 6 months, and there is a bit of a recognition now that businesses are actually taking action because it is a really big business risk, and inaction is not a reliable risk management strategy. So we are getting there in terms of changing that narrative. I think the next challenge is getting away from people tune out if it's all doom and gloom and apocalyptic and we're all going to die. That sort of narrative just makes people and readers tune out. So it's how we actually tell an opportunity story, because climate action doesn't automatically mean costing money and costing jobs. There are opportunities for business to win new customers and clients, reduce their emissions, but also save money. So there's lots of great stuff in this space. In terms of my challenge, in this role, I kind of do feel like, in the greatest respect, it's a little bit like herding cats, because there's one of me, I do this part-time, there's 76 CLC members. For Catherine, she's got more than 100 SBC members, and we want to try and coordinate and corral you guys into telling collective things. So, for instance, what one of you is doing in the EV space is probably not newsworthy, but if we can work out what all 76 members of the Climate Leaders Coalition are doing in the EV space, and we can work out how much of New Zealand's fleet is a business fleet of EVs, that's going to be massively newsworthy. But that is going to take you guys responding to my emails, and not that you haven't, but I haven't actually sent you the email yet, but there will be an email asking this question. There'll be a whole lot of other themes as well that we're keen to do things on, such as hydrogen, tree planting, building green, smart energy use, LEDs, that sort of stuff. So the more information and intel we can get, the better stories we can pitch, but also when we're doing whatever the anniversary annual report looks like, we can actually tell some really tangible stories about what members are doing, which will help placate any sort of media. If they ask again, is this greenwashing, we can say no, and here's why it's not greenwashing.
Okay, so this is my take on the attitudes out there. So the different categories, what the audiences think about sustainability and climate change. What we don't know yet are how many people fall into each category. I have my suspicions. I think that here we're talking to a passionate a small but passionate number, who they know and they care already. I think this is probably the largest group that don't know and don't care. Up here, the care but don't know how to take action. I think that might be a key group who we can help by informing them, but also via a more sort of emotional values approach, reassuring them that it's not that hard, that you can take action, that it is possible, overcoming that maybe fear barrier. Down here we've got the know and don't care. They've heard all the arguments, they're not convinced, and they don't care. They might be the hardest to shift, but I am confident that they are an increasingly small group of people. Right. Thanks. So these are what I think the attitudes are in each group, and so over here, here's where we can try and make it relevant to their decision making. Try and that might be a bit of a sideways approach. So rather than talking about sustainability values that they maybe can't quite connect to, we take more of a roundabout approach and talk about family and community values and wanting a good future for their children, or exciting new jobs or exciting new technologies. Then up here again, they need the reassurance that they want to believe it. So yep, we want to give them the information, but I can't afford to pay more. Does it necessarily have to be more expensive? Perhaps not. So that's the information and the reassurance. Over here, well, I'm hoping that shifting these two groups will kind of bring these, they'll be kind of tugged along in the wake. And here, well, you can't please everyone. No matter how much you do, they might still want you to do more. But I think every so often I do think we need to celebrate what we are doing by saying, actually, look, 76 businesses in the Climate Leaders Coalition, over 100 in SBC, and you're all doing great stuff, so let's celebrate that. Okay. So, with all of that framing for you, what we'd like you to do now is we'd like to invite you to participate in a little exercise. And so what we've got is 3 posters around the room talking about caring for the environment, caring for staff, and caring for your community. And I sent an email out a couple of days ago asking for your sustainability topics that perhaps you're struggling to get the stories out there. Because perhaps you're trying to do the storytelling on your own. And so what I'd like you to do is, in a moment, gravitate towards the poster that fits the initiative you're thinking of, put it on a Post-it note, put it on the poster, and everybody else there, once you've got your initiatives up, have a look for where there's maybe some common themes, and think about ways that you could maybe partner up with that company, with other companies who are working in those areas, or with community groups or other organisations who are doing similar things. Because what we've really found is what we're all about is telling the collective story. So that means that we're stronger together, and that could be a matter of having 3 partners or 103. Yeah. So I'll if you'd like to stand up, push the chairs around, give yourselves a bit of room, and we'll do that for 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about maybe some of the linkages that we can see coming out. All right. Thank you. Oh, and I'll pass out some Post-it notes. For the live stream people, we'd invite you to put your ideas in the chat box as well, and Amy's monitoring those, and we can contribute those into the discussion as well. Thanks. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your enthusiasm for the discussion and for contributing your ideas. I wonder if I can ask for a volunteer to just talk about the environment poster, because that has looks like it has a particularly festive number of post-it notes on. Who put up a post-it note on the environment poster? Fantastic. All right. Okay. Barbara, would you like to talk about maybe what the idea that you put up? Yeah.
I was almost going to steal Abby's term of green hush, because that really is the problem we have, that our clients do great work. We encourage them to talk about it and they go, no, that's just what we do. But it is, I think, Abby, your term of green hush is, I guess, our challenge too.
Okay. Who else had something? Morris?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Caught me in the middle of something else.
You hold your phone, you get picked on.
Yeah, thanks. I think that the main reason for me to come here today even was just how do you make storytelling more interesting without causing doom and gloom, and how do we get businesses to actually incorporate into their strategy? I think Andrea put up something very similar. So that's my question. I haven't got an answer yet, so I was hoping to hear more from you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Did anyone notice common themes coming out on within the post-it notes? And actually, when we break for drinks, which will be soon, can I ask you to also put your names by the company name by the post-it note, because that will be helpful for any follow-up as well. Yeah. So any themes that you can see emerging from?
Exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. All right. Can I just get you to say it into the microphone?
Oh, yeah, sure. There were quite a few post-its around communicating the complexities of climate solutions. So something like, I work for the Ministry for the Environment, and communicating the emissions trading scheme, which is so complex in a way that is understandable for everyone, is quite challenging.
Absolutely.
I'll give just a small perspective on that. So I used to be a journalist, and I remember when the ETS was first kind of born, and MFE did a workshop, like a briefing for media, where they tried to explain the ETS to us. And I don't think that doesn't really seem to happen as much anymore, because I know journos get a lot busier, and it's quite, it can be quite hard. But I think on a really, really technical thing, trying to actually spend a bit of time upskilling journalists is really helpful, but also giving them access to the real people, the technical experts. So not just your comms person or your CEO, but let them talk to your scientist about it, or whoever is the technical person, because that's authentic and genuine for them. And I guess the other thing on that, which makes it quite hard, is it's how you actually upskill your real person and your expert to speak to media. So you are going to have to invest a bit of time in media training them and getting them comfortable and speaking in sound bites, and not thinking that journalists are these really, really scary things, because it is a real symbiotic relationship. But you can definitely build that technical expertise with them, but it is just resource intensive. But I'd really encourage people to do it, because when you do it well, it works really well.
Yep, great. And Abby, can I shoulder tap you to talk about what was being talked about for the caring for your people?
The common theme was most of the communications challenges that we had around our people were actually internal challenges, so largely. So how do we talk better to our people about things? So the two examples which are up there, one is Vodafone, who have a really phenomenally good volunteering program. Vodafone staff can take up to 2 weeks off volunteering, so none of this day a year bizzo, 2 weeks. And one of the things Lani was wondering about is how you communicate that to your people, because they only get 100 people taking it up a year. So there's a question first about how you get it to people, and then how you talk about it more widely. And then Caitlin from Thank You Payroll was talking about some of the awesome stuff they do there. And again, I think your staff mostly know about it, but actually some of the stuff is the kind of thing that probably the world could hear about, like the fact that they have this hugely dog-friendly office, and that seems to have really, really good well-being impacts for their people. But also they get an extra day of, like, they get 5 weeks of leave. They get a well-being allowance. So there's really neat ideas which will be really good for the sorts of, well-being for people. But again, how do you talk about those sorts of things externally? But most of it was internal focused.
Okay, thank you, Abby. And now I know where my next job is. Cool. And would anyone like to talk about oh, yeah. That's all right. For the people watching at home.
I guess a comment, maybe / question, if anyone dares go near this, but I have a background in the academic community, and one of the issues that is happening in terms of people who study climate change at depth is like climate grief and like a severe anxiety and other mental health issues that are caused by repeated exposure to the science. So, unfortunately, yeah. And so, how does one balance, I guess, being truthful with the data and communicating that to people without being doom and gloom, and like how does that get all balanced? Is a question that I would have. Not that I work in comms or anything, but just to people.
Yeah, that's kind of something that we've been thinking quite a lot about, and there is a big piece, and it's not just for CLC members, but there's probably a role for government, and Abby speaks about this way better than me, but I'll try paraphrase. But there does need to be a bit of a kind of hearts and minds campaign with New Zealanders to take them on a bit of a journey about what this stuff means and where we kind of need to get to as a country, because if you just kind of go straight to the real, the science is looking terrible and it's worse than we thought yesterday, they just tune out because it's too hard and it's too difficult. But I think, a good example of that is what the public has been like around plastics, because they feel like they can do something about it even if that's slightly flawed. But, that it's tangible for them and they know that they can actually have an impact. Whereas if you're talking about reducing your emissions, but you don't actually even explain to a consumer what are the type of emissions that you're making, they don't really even know how to engage with it. It's just really complex and technical. So we really need to break it down. But there is that real challenge around how do you actually take them on a journey and not just kind of preach to them. And I don't have an answer for that, but it's something we'd love to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and would anyone like to talk about the post-its on caring about your community? What themes have we got there?
I could do one.
Great, thank you.
So we talked a little bit about a project that I'm involved with where we're focused on social procurement and through infrastructure development, so that's around providing employment to groups that we might not necessarily provide employment to, engaging with different sorts of businesses. And we were talking less about how do you kind of tell the story of how great that is, to more about how do you communicate with those communities that you're wanting to engage with in that process, and the challenges that might present. Also about kind of over-promising in an area where it's going to be really hard, and that it will probably be slow and long and will involve partnering. We've talked about partnering in this forum, I think, before. You'll be building partnerships with people. So we were kind of talking about that space. But what was also interesting about it was within the group there were some people who said, oh, that's a great idea. That's be something that we should think about doing in our organisation. So it just does show that kind of sharing the ideas, even though you might not have completed them, even though you might not have kind of got it all ticked off and be able to. And I think that sometimes what we do is that we want to wait for the successes before we start communicating. And in this game, the more that we can talk about what we're doing in terms of intention and making progress, and also the failures that we have, etc., the more important it is, because it shares the story. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, a little bit. So it actually was really inspiring, and I think one thing that I've been talking to Rachel about, actually, and probably the theme of Mike's next op-ed is around the power of the first follower. So also by telling stories, you give first followers an opportunity to also do the same, and that's what ultimately creates a movement. So, if you started doing this and started talking about it and Z followed suit, basically we transform the lone nut into a leader. And then you have more people who feel it's safe to join, and that's exactly what the Climate Leaders Coalition does as well. It's, a group of people saying this is more than us going it alone. This is a movement. Come join us, because at some point we'll get to the tipping point where if you're on the fringes and not part of the CLC, then you're the one that's on the outside. So yeah, I thought that was really, really cool example.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I feel in awe of the collective wisdom in the room, actually, and I think this is such the strength of SBC and CLC is bringing everyone together, when actually everyone has access to these wonderful ideas, and when we pull them, that's when we can do great things. Okay.
So I kind of wanted to just quickly go through a couple of recent media examples. So Stuff is one of the members of the CLC, and their kind of contribution to this is around launching the Quick Save the Planet series. So it's a series of climate storytelling, which it's a long-term project for them. From talking to Stuff, they said it's performing really well. It's getting well read, and it will continue to be something that they'll put stories in. One thing that they are keen on is opinion pieces from business leaders. Also, NBR's keen on the same, and the New Zealand Herald. So the next one that we'll be doing will be with Mike Bennett as convener of the CLC, but there's lots of scope to get other thought leadership pieces from your businesses out there. So please do let us know, or directly go and pitch them to media. Our first kind of foray into the whole collective storytelling was the next story down. So media, what I've kind of discovered over the last few years is they love listicles. It's quite easy for them, and top 10 things or top 5 places to go, and it's kind of an easy way to get stories across. So we did a top 10 tips for business to reduce their emissions, and we tried to make it really practical and things that businesses can be doing right now. So it was things like changing all your light bulbs to LEDs, and we had a quote from Zed talking about how that had helped reduce their energy consumption on their forecourts massively. So is that really, really practical stuff, because the reality is that the CLC, there's a lot of the big end of town in there, but there's also, New Zealand's got a lot of small businesses that probably need a bit of direction, so that was trying to make it a bit less scary, and hey, you guys can be doing things. There's also, I think, the Sky City story was a really good example. They had a really neat initiative around food waste. They had some great kind of quirky statistics in there, and they managed to get it into the Jessie Mulligan afternoon show on Radio New Zealand. So look, there's lots of ways that you guys can get your stuff into the media, and one of the things we recognise is it can be kind of hard to know to kind of where to go. So we've created a resource kit for you, which we'll send you tomorrow, which is kind of designed to help you easily and effectively communicate your involvement in the Climate Leaders Coalition. But also we've kind of identified all the key reporters in the country that are interested in this stuff, and have given you their contact details so you can go and spam them with what you're doing. In saying that though, I've got a bit of a pet peeve about press releases. So a lot of businesses have given us feedback that they've said, we're doing this great stuff on EVs, and we sent out a press release and it went nowhere. The reality is it is going to go nowhere, because a press release, it's not exclusive. It's getting into, as a journalist, I used to get about 100 press releases a day. So unless it's a really amazing story or really, really newsworthy, I'm just not going to care. So we've got to kind of get out of the habit of just doing a press release, and instead thinking, right, what's the story? What media organisation would this suit? And then going, like, directly ringing them or emailing them and pitching it to them as an exclusive. And then after that, you can go and do your press release. But it's just kind of changing the way we go about things. And the other thing is, get real people, the authentic people in your organisation to be the spokespeople. So if you're an engineering firm, the person you should be fronting is the engineer in their hard hat that can stand there and talk about what climate change means for the work they're doing on the West Coast, and not your comms manager or your chief executive. So that would be my take on it. I think you'll have more success if we start to do that type of storytelling.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And on that as well, we've been talking to Science Media Centre in the past about doing a storytelling workshop for scientists and experts, and so we'll be continuing that discussion and seeing what comes out of it. So we're asking for expressions of interest from members. If you've already expressed your interest, that has been noted. But if you're just hearing about it now and you'd like to be involved in some way, do get in touch. And again, actually, on your point, Kerry, about the great things that are happening in the business. Ideas don't always have to be completely finished and signed off and everything before you tell the story. And there's some really fantastic stuff going on in companies that there is great potential to tell that story to media, but you don't have to worry about the 2-year project being completed yet. I really love the work that Damien Christie's been doing. He got a grant to set up the Aotearoa Science Agency, I think, and part of that is actually going to companies while they're doing the cool things, while they're doing the cool research with, developing the robots or whatever, and filming footage that you can use in 2 years' time when the project's completed, when you've got the results. Because otherwise, if you've finished the robots and shipped them off to wherever, it doesn't make for very good video. You need those assets. So keeping track of your projects as they go, doing some video clips here and there, taking some photos so you've got something to show at the end is good as well. Great. All right. Do you want to talk about we've talked about the resource kit.
Yeah, so we kind of just have a quick chat about what we need from you guys, and then and vice versa.
Absolutely. I've got to sort of stand in the sweet spot where you can all see the slide and I'm still on camera. So we basically just please do keep sending us your news stories that we can put in the database and collect find the collective impact through the 50 companies doing this cool thing, and also that we can share them with our community via the Pānui newsletter. Do talk about being a member of the SBC and the value that you get from that, because we're hoping that will spur other companies to get on board with being a member, but also sustainability in general. And keep your eyes peeled for media opportunities. What's coming up out in the community that you can perhaps tell a story about. And just a couple of examples of this is, of course, we've got International Women's Day coming up on March the 8th again. And I think this would be a great opportunity to put the spotlight on what some of our members are doing around gender equity and equal pay. So I'd be really keen to hear from anyone who wants to do some work in that space. There's things coming up, like there might be a workshop on adaptation coming out of the climate leaders work, and so anyone doing work around that, whether it's an engineering project to shore up roads for future against future storms, that's exactly the sort of thing that we'd love to hear about.
Right, in terms of what I need from you, the Climate Leaders Coalition is now on LinkedIn and Twitter. We're looking a bit lonely, so please do follow us and be our friends. We'd like to get the membership or the following up. That also helps if you tag me. It helps me to cross promote what you guys are doing. So it's a bit of quid pro quo. Please do also mention that you are a member of the CLC in your sustainability news and your annual reports, sustainability reports, and on your websites. The other thing we really need, and the CEOs that are part of the CLC are really hot on this, but we want case studies, at least one a year from each business. And the reason is we want to actually help other businesses learn from other businesses' mistakes. So if you've rolled out an EV fleet and you've made some mistakes along the way, and you can share your learnings, that's really going to help another company when they're going down their angle. So please do provide us with case studies. And the other pet peeve at the moment is there are company pages. So every CLC member has a page on the website. Some of them are looking really lean or really outdated. So if you haven't, please do update your page, go and look at it, update your content and send it to me and I'll update it for you. And also please just keep us in the loop about what you're doing, because as we kind of said, there's only 2 of us and there's lots of you. So the more we can work together, the better. And just lastly, we're kind of keen to know how we can help you guys. So we'll send you out the resource kit tomorrow. Also can help you, help you collectively pitch your stories to media. We've talked about the workshop, but please let us know if there are other things that we can be doing to help you all. Tell your climate change, but also your sustainability stories.
Great. And that brings us to the end. So thank you very much for coming to this part of the session.